Betrayal does not begin the day trust is broken. It begins earlier in a moment that feels completely safe. A promise is made. It feels real. It feels permanent. Nothing in that moment suggests it will fail, because in that moment it won't. The problem is not the promise. The problem is that the promise belongs to a situation, and situations do not stay the same. A person speaks from where they stand, from what they know, from what they feel at that time. That version of them is honest, but that version is temporary. Time moves, circumstances shift, pressure enters, and slowly something changes. Not always the person, sometimes just the situation around them, and that is enough. Because decisions are made inside conditions, change the condition, and the decision changes. This is where the first fracture forms, not visible, not intentional, not dramatic. Just a small gap between what was said and what is now required. The mind notices it, but it does not call it betrayal. It calls it adjustment. It calls it necessity. It calls it survival, because at the center of every decision there is one constant: self-preservation. Not as a flaw, but as a function. Every person carries it, even when they appear selfless, even when they appear committed. When pressure increases, that layer becomes visible. Priorities rearrange. What once felt absolute becomes flexible. What once felt certain becomes negotiable. And slowly the promise starts losing weight, not because it was fake, but because something else became heavier. This is the part no one sees. No conflict, no confrontation, no warning, just internal shifting. And that shifting continues until a moment arrives, a moment where keeping the promise comes at a cost. A real cost. Loss of comfort, loss of security, and loss of stability. Now the mind has to choose, not between right and wrong, but between sacrifice and self-protection. The promise is still there, but so is the consequence of keeping it. The mind begins to justify. Quietly, this situation is different. This is not what I expected. This cannot work anymore. Nothing sounds wrong. Everything sounds reasonable. And that is how the shift completes. The action follows. The promise breaks. From the outside, it feels sudden. From the inside, it was built slowly. That is why betrayal feels like collapse. Because the expectation was built on something that no longer exists. A past version of a person, a past situation, a past alignment. But all of it changed. But the expectation remained fixed. And when reality caught up, it felt like destruction. The mind reacts. Anger, confusion, disbelief. How could this happen? It happened the moment change was ignored. Nothing in life stays fixed. Not situations, not emotions, not priorities. Even the same person under different pressure becomes different. This is not about morality. This is about structure. Human decisions are responsive to pressure, responsive to environment, responsive to consequence. Ignore that, and every expectation becomes fragile. Understanding this does not remove trust. It changes how trust is held. You believe, but you also see. You commit, but you also understand. You stand with someone, but you know they stand within their conditions, and those conditions can change. This is not fear. Fear expects betrayal. Awareness allows possibility. There is a difference. Fear weakens trust. Awareness stabilizes it, because now you are not shocked by change. You are prepared for it. You do not build expectations as absolutes. You build them with space. Space for pressure, space for change, space for reality. Because reality does not negotiate with intention. It moves, and everything adjusts with it. Sometimes that adjustment comes from others. Sometimes it comes from you. You give your word. You mean it. Then a moment arrives. A difficult one. Keeping that word now demands something heavier, something you did not account for. Now you stand at the same point, between sacrifice and self-preservation, and suddenly your own clarity shifts. The decision is no longer simple. You begin to think. You begin to weigh. You begin to justify, and slowly your own certainty changes. At that moment, everything becomes clear. Betrayal is not about intention. It is about conditions. Conditions that reveal what truly matters in that moment. And that changes everything. Because now the question shifts. Not why did they betray, But what changed? The focus moves from blame to understanding, from emotion to structure. And once that shift happens, something stabilizes inside. Trust does not disappear. It matures. You still believe. You still connect. You still commit. But you do not collapse when things change, because you were never holding permanence. You were holding a moment, and moments change. Always. And once you see that clearly, betrayal stops being shocking. It becomes understandable. And in that understanding, you stop breaking when things break. This channel gives you raw perspective of real life. Consider subscribing for more wisdom.